Hello, great souls. So it's a beautiful topic, many paths to truth. And it's a topic that resonates deeply with my soul. Part of it, I remember when I began to learn about these teachings and learn about Yogananda and Ananda, Kriyananda, the message that Yogananda said, underneath all truth, there's a unity that you'll find. Whatever the expression may be, if it's truth, there's a unity, a current of resonance present. The details of different religions, different paths can be different. They can be very different, but you'll feel a similar truth in them, right? And then in finding your own path, part of what we're listening for is a sense of truth resonating in us, right? Like, where are the teachings, the practices, the people that when I'm in the midst of them, I feel within myself a yes. I may not understand it, which has been very true for me in my journey of I was listening to a friend recently talking about God's will, following God's will, and he said, sometimes I say, really? And it just made me chuckle because I know that feeling but each time if I go back in and there's a rightness to it that I can feel, I go toward it. And Swami talks about that in terms of intuition, we have to test it. And personally, I think that's one of the most uncomfortable parts of intuition, is that, it's my best understanding, it's my best sense of what's right and true. And Swami Kriyananda gives 3 qualities to look for: clarity, calmness, and joy. He said you may not feel all of them, but you should at least feel one of them. And also not excitement, not agitation. So, in terms of clarity, what I've learned is that if I'm not quite sure, I'm not clear. Doesn't mean I'm not sensing the right direction. Sometimes emotions can stir up and cloud my understanding. So I think of Jyotish telling a story. He was trying to describe what the mind can do in terms of agitation. And many of you probably have heard this, but he said, imagine that there's a table with a pile of feathers, right? Down feathers, right? And there it is still, and a big pile, and then above the table is a fan. And someone turns the fan on, and we just automatically know whoosh, what happens. He said that's what happens with the mind, can agitate that inner calmness, that inner sense. And I was reflecting on a story that Yogananda tells in the autobiography where he's meditating and very restless, but very determined. And Sri Yukteswar, his guru, is calling to him, and I think at the time he was Mukunda, but come here. I'm meditating, and I don't think he answered at first, but eventually, I'm meditating. He said, I know how you're meditating. You're not meditating, right? You're trying. Okay, but, and he was going and then did give samadhi, God realization. And there's an incredible account of that, extraordinary. Whenever I read it, it's so big that, I just do my best to receive what I can of it. That this is the experience that is our destiny, every one of us. A truth already present within us. And then interestingly, shortly after, maybe that same exact day, I can't remember, Yogananda asks about when will I know God, right? And once you read the account of what he experienced, it's hard to imagine that he wouldn't understand. And Yukteswar says, what do you think you've experienced? Clearly, it's not some personage sitting on a cloud, right? But it was this idea that to know God is to know this human being. And what the teachings of yoga say is that God incarnates into humanity. That's what all of these masters are, a pure incarnation. So again, the mind, it's not easy to grasp. Swami talked about this with Master, that he was a human being. He was eating. He was, telling humorous stories. He was so kind and generous and all of these things. And yet he was God, realized. And it was so evident in his presence. Asha talks about when her first talk, and many of you may have heard that, probably have heard this, many of you, that, it's at Stanford, oh, the Swami's coming, all right, I'll go. But the group she's with wants to be way in the back. Who knows who the Swami is? So I think it was kind of like we'd like to escape if we need to. We don't want to get too close. And, but as soon as she saw him walk in, she felt his consciousness. She absolutely knew that's what I'm trying to attain. She'd been studying the teachings of self-realization with, I believe, could have been Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, I'm not sure, but she was kind of grasping it, but couldn't imagine how to do it. And as soon as she saw him, there it is, that's what it looks like. And there was no hesitation. She was immediately a disciple. And, oh, okay, so Yogananda's his master. All right, I guess he's my master, right? And I remember her saying that she just told Yogananda, and if it was Ramakrishna, whichever other master it was, you guys figure it out. I mean, I don't know. She felt so connected to the other master, but it was for her, a certainty of truth. Not an outer certainty that makes sense to the mind, but an inner certainty of truth. This is who I need to follow, right? And so all of her talks and all of her sharing, this long, beautiful discipleship journey with Swami Kriyananda and Yogananda, these masters, what it looks like to say yes. And she also acknowledges that it must be past incarnations that prepared her to say yes so completely in an instant and never waver. I mean, that is unusual. That is unusual. And what I appreciate about the yogic teachings is this understanding that we are being prepared, that every part of the journey is preparing us to know God. And there's no misstep in that. So someone next to me, their path is different. The teachings they follow are different. The choices they need to make in life, very different. But what I've observed is when the path is centered in truth and the individual is doing their very best to listen to an inner rightness about the choices they're making, there's harmony in that. I've always found. I was thinking of a friend in terms of reflecting on this reading, who we met each other in 12 steps, and we've stayed connected, and we're very different, right? And I just enjoy her. There's something, and probably I'm certain that 12 steps connects us, but I always enjoy the way she, I'm trying to find a way of saying this, but yes, the way she moves through the world, but the world she brings to me. I think that's what I'd say. She's an amazing artist, and so the books we read are different, and the things that inspire us are different, but somehow in them there is always a thread of truth. There is always, and I love it, and we just have, very animated conversations and sharing, and I saw her the other day, and she said to me, she just kind of paused, and she said, so for you, it's always about spirit. And I said, I guess that's true, right? I hadn't really thought of it in that way, but I was realizing one more talk I was mentioning or one more book, right? Very true. I said, that's true. That's right. And I could just see her being like, it always comes back to that for you. It's like, that's true. And yeah, for her, it's something different, but she appreciates it, right? And this is when I think of just the two songs today. I always... I notice this every time, but there's always this kind of moment where I go, oh, that's why the song is so perfect. Brothers. Why is brothers so perfect? Different languages, different lands, different customs. And how is it that when I'm open and receptive to what is universal, I feel it. And certainly when others are open and receptive to me, when they're not putting me in a tight box, right? And I was reminded of, and yoga was, many of you have heard me say this, but yoga was very surprising in my journey. I just feel like my whole spiritual journey has these moments of quite surprise in them. But when I was exploring it and I just kept feeling like, I can't explain why this is right, but it's right. And, how does it fit with being a Catholic? I don't know how it fits with being a Catholic, but somehow it's right. Well, going along in the journey, at a certain point, discipleship felt right. It was a huge decision. I mean, it is a huge decision. But in each point along this journey of these teachings, I just go back to Christ and give him a moment to correct me. You're like, if I have gotten this wrong, this is the moment, so step in. And, to the contrary, I receive just enough, and sometimes personally it's a very large inner experience of rightness. So that happened with discipleship for me. And afterward, James and I lived on the East Coast, and so I was out here coming to Ananda, and we would often arrange that afterward we'd go to see his family, who lived in Northern California. The first thing that happened when we walked in his parents' house, his dad looked at me and said, "Are you still Catholic?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, yes, I am." I'm thinking, I don't know how else to answer that. I don't know. And it just was not it wasn't easy in terms of the mind. It was always easy in the heart. There's just absolutely no difference. And I could feel personally, from my very first Ananda retreat, I could feel the presence of Christ. I really could, telling me, study this master as if he were me. It's a tall order. I thought, wow, as if he were you. Okay, I'll try. And one time during many of you have heard of the Living Discipleship Program. I waited many, many, many years to take it for various reasons. Finally took it, and there was a moment, we meditate deeply every day, and it's really training you. It's like boot camp for discipleship. And on one day in my meditation, I had this, what felt very much like a sacred gift of an inner gift. And it was an image, so I'll just say my imagination, I can't explain it, I just know what I felt and saw in my mind's eye, which was Yogananda standing at an ashram, and me as a young woman, right, coming to knock on the door. And he opened the door and I said, "My master has sent me to study with you." And he said, "I know, I've been waiting for you." And then, right then, I felt Christ standing off to the side, and I felt him speak to Christ and said, "She's been a very good student." I was like, okay, I've been a very good student. It was so healing. It was so healing to feel like it's okay that a lot of it feels like a mystery. It's okay. It's okay that, I can't always evaluate how well I'm doing. I just keep coming back and saying, I hope I'm on track here. And the reading today, it just speaks so deeply to when Swami said, it's not about opinions of others. It's not about praise. It's not about blame. Those words are very strong to me because that was not easy for me to release in my life, was someone else's opinion of what I should be doing. And when I would feel the conflict of, I understand what they're saying, I understand why they're saying it, they're making a good point, maybe several good points, but it's not true for me. And I can't explain to them why, because intuition doesn't come with that. It's often how I do know it's intuition. I'm like, I can't come up with a great bullet point spreadsheet here of like why this is the right choice. It could be the wrong choice. And Swami says that, like just be sensitive, but if you're going to be strong, if we're going to be strong in our discipleship, strong in our relationship with the divine, we grow into warriors. We're willing to stand in what we know to be true, not in a blind way that I'm not asking for feedback. I do seek counsel. I do go to my teachers, my ministers, and friends and ask for that. But often it comes after I've done my deep, deep, deep reflection, prayer, meditation, introspection first. And then I go to hear their opinion. And I'll usually not share mine. I just, what's your read on this? And very often, not always, but very often, I'll give the example, it lines up, right? And it's like, okay, that's what I got. When I said not always, I had an experience. It wasn't after deep prayer and meditation and introspection. It was pretty quick. I'd received a note from someone, and I felt like, as I started to respond, something in me said, wait. And I thought, oh, okay. I feel fine responding, and I know they're upset, but I don't mind responding. And so I just asked James, could you read this? Would you mind reading this? He read it and said, do not respond. I was so surprised. I thought, really? Do not respond. No, it's not a good idea. It's not going to be helpful. It won't help either of you. And I said, okay, but that was hard because I felt like, just leave it, don't say anything. Leave it, don't say anything. Okay, I went to the temple and prayed and meditated and practiced Kriya. We're thinking of celebrating Lahiri, his response to everything, more Kriya, right? And if you don't practice Kriya, meditation, introspection, inner communion, that's the answer. And so I went to the temple. It brought me to a place of more calm. I think I didn't realize that as much as I felt ready to respond, I wasn't entirely calm. I didn't know that till I went to the temple and I realized, oh, okay, I'm not entirely calm, partly because of James's answer. Wasn't sure he was right about that. So I'm going to go meditate on that. He goes, okay, yeah. And so, I came home and I said to him, I want to call one of my, spiritual friends. And he said, that's fine. I just love the completely impersonal. Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah. Just sharing with you, my sense of it. And I called her and said, could I share this with you? And I sent it to her. Could you read this and, just tell me what you think? Do not respond. Really? No. And she said in different words, but the very same thing is this can't be addressed that way. It's coming, it's not on the super conscious level. It's just not. And it's okay, but don't respond. And then, I thought, okay, give it back to God. Right, so that is why I seek guidance and confirmation and support. It's such a blend of being totally, to the best of my ability, faithful to truth as I understand it, and not blind to messages. One of the things that is reassuring to me that Swami says is, if we're off course, if we keep asking, we'll be corrected. So just keep asking. And if I've gotten it wrong, it's not. The other thing I'll say is that I've come to appreciate and recognize how it feels within myself if I'm off course. And Swami there's him talking about writing one time. He said he was writing a letter, and he was writing it, and he wrote a sentence that looked like accurate, truthful, nice, and he felt no. And he paused and he sat with it, and he took the sentence out, calm, the right thing. Put the sentence back in. He liked the sentence. Right? No, it's not right. And so I always appreciate him sharing that of how do we become a finely tuned instrument to recognize vibration and be able to tell this is the right way. Right? This is an Asha very often talks about it's the center. So if I'm off, I'll notice if I'm attentive and practicing. Just won't feel centered. Like, okay, same thing this way. It's within our own consciousness, the deep practice of finding that pole star within, lifting the consciousness, and welcoming the truth. Welcoming the truth. So, let's see if there's anything else to say. I don't think so. I don't think there's anything else to say. Great to be with you all.
Let's take a moment and allow these words to sink in deeply. We'll have some music.